Hello there, I'm Emma, and this is my quick deep dive into Bleach, the manga, and the anime. Quick side note, I'm a really big fan of the manga, less of the anime, and today we will find out why the manga is better than the anime. But first, let us get into the history of Bleach. Bleach was written and illustrated by Kubo Tite, and the manga was serialized for 15 years in Shueisha's Weekly Shonen Jump from August 7th, 2001 to August 22nd, 2016. It has a total of 698 individual chapters, which were collected into 74 tankobon volumes released between January 5th, 2002 and November 4th, 2016. In an interview with the mangaka himself, we learned that Kupu initially wanted to draw a Shinigami, also known as a Soul Reaper, in a kimono, and ended up drawing what we now know as Kojiki Rukia, who is one of the main characters in Bleach. Then this kickstarted his creation of the manga. To give an overview plot wise, Bleach is set in modern day Japan about Kurosaki Ichigo, a high school student who could see spirits since his mother's death and his journey as a Shinigami and maybe more. So it's a pretty basic shonen plot where the series is like action-packed fights and twists and turns with the plot here and there, and it will hurt your brain like a little bit, but it's fine. It's all for the best. Some will say that Bleach was a flop and just not understand its popularity. But let me tell you something, okay? In the early 2000s, when manga was slowly still gaining popularity worldwide, Shonen Jump, one of the longest running manga magazines in Japan, had the iconic big three mangas: Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach. Okay? So these three mangas pretty much dominated much of early 2000s Japanese mangas and just secured Bleach's position as a top and renowned manga in like nearly everyone's eyes. So, what was the magic of Bleach? I would say it's pretty subjective, like what people think of its appeal. But Kubo had a large cast of characters that he had created, and they each still had unique designs and characteristics that made them memorable to like a really large audience. On top of that, my man Ichigo was just a really relatable character for many teenagers, as he's just trying to protect himself, his friends, his family from getting killed by evil spirits called Hollows, while also grappling with his new responsibilities as a Shinigami. Furthermore, the overarching storyline that Kubo had hinted at from the beginning kept the plot potential up for Bleach. So I would say that the main selling point for Bleach was relatable characters in an action-packed supernatural yokai world, which fulfills the many fantasies that teenagers have of exploring a new world while having just really badass powers. Moving on to the manga, I have to say that I absolutely enjoyed myself reading it. Kubo's art style and design is so unique and distinct. He manages to give each character a very unique design that emphasizes the individuality and the role that they will play in the story. Let's have a quick look at the 12 captains in Soul Society. Each captain of the 12 divisions have different looks despite wearing the same uniform, with each having their own flair and style added to it. And even in this panel of Ichigo being pinned down by the Vizards, we can still see the unique designs of each character in the panel as they stop Ichigo. To talk formally about the manga, Kubo has a tendency to do the opposite of the masking effect in a lot of his drawings, where he will instead focus on the character being more detailed and have them against a very plain and empty background. Here, we have many of our characters against a pure white background, and the perspective angle that we are getting is from the bottom pointing upwards, which gives readers a sort of fisheye view of the action happening. Hence, we feel like we are in Ichigo's shoes and are on the floor like him, while everyone else is enlarged and towering over him. The sound effect of boom is also very big and like split down the center to reveal to us the scene, acting as like a frame of sorts. Overall, The scene with the katanas right in your face and the visors all piled on Ichigo is a pretty good representation of Kubo's style. Minimal background and more emphasis on the character's actions and expressions to make a visceral impression. Some other iconic and representative scenes of Kubo's style to create dramatic impact are as follows. Aizen stabbing Hinamori, his lieutenant in a huge plot twist, Byakuya releasing his majestic Bankai during his fight with Ichigo, and Ichigo's blood spraying from his shoulder when he was injured in a fight. This last one especially has Ichigo as the only subject in the panel, and the dramatic spray of his blood in a violent way is a stark contrast to the rest of the empty space around him. Thus, Kubo ensures readers get sucked into the world of Bleach via emphasis on character. Alas, we get to the anime. Starting in 2004, the anime wasn't a bad hit in general for most viewers, and it was a decent adaptation for most of it, introducing Bleach to the main screen. But there are an abundance of flaws in the anime which definitely left a stain on its reputation. Firstly, we have to talk about early animation. I know at the time, it wasn't really good, but the 2D panels just could have been way better, and the proportions of characters were kind of funky at certain times. Like here, Ichigo's legs just look really awkward as he sits down. They just don't look like legs. Here is Renji strangely flattened and weird expression on his face. And here we see Ichigo's hand look as if AI drew it. It just looks weird. Another issue is the adaptation. While I do agree that fidelity criticism, the idea that an adaptation has to be true to its original text, is not indicative of it being successful, the animation team's altering of little details here and there was just not it. I am, of course, referring to the infamous Ichiruki versus Ichihime ship wars. Yes, I'm so serious, this is an actual thing. Notoriously, the anime has been the greatest cause of shipping Ichigo and Rukia, who is, mind you, a spirit with a teenage boy, due to the adding of interactions between them that never existed in the manga, and this shifted the audience gaze to these two instead. But canonically, from the manga, Ichigo has a crush on and does end up with Inoue Orihime, one of his friends. Out of curiosity on the ship wars, I read this comprehensive Tumblr post by user Ichinoe, which explains why Ichigo and Orihime are endgame, and them getting married at the end of the series, which, spoilers, was to be expected. Other than obvious species reasons, where Ichigo and Orihime are mortal humans, while Rukia is a few hundred years old Shinigami spirit, the post sheds more light on the obvious tells in the manga that informs readers of Ichigo's care for Orihime that progresses from interest to love throughout the series. Anime-only watchers will argue that Rukia and Ichigo have more chemistry because they only have that as their source material. But having seen most of the anime and read all of the manga, the differences are a little jarring and annoying because it involves the main character's romantic endgame. The whole of Hyukomondo arc was dedicated to rescuing Orihime and to cement just how much Ichigo cared for her to propel the relationship forward in the story as well. Although adaptational changes are not unwelcome as it can give way to more creativity, it becomes an issue when Kubo has overtly written Ichihime to be the main romantic ship in the original manga. However, I think that the most atrocious sin that the anime has committed is the insane amount of fillers it has compared to the actual canonical story. The first rendition of Bleach's anime aired from October 2004 to March 2012 with a total of 366 episodes. That's a lot of episodes, but guess just how much of that is just filler. 163 of those episodes are pure filler and not relevant to the main story at all. This point is also what threw a lot of people off of Bleach and disrupted the main story's pacing, as nearly 40 5% of the anime is completely unrelated to the manga. However, we must remember that filler is a necessary evil of anime. The typical function of anime filler is to allow the corresponding manga to get ahead in the story so that the anime has enough to go off on. If animes do not have filler but have caught up with the source material, they would forge their own path ahead in the narrative, which can have really disastrous consequences and permanently derail an arc. So, on the bright side, some filler arcs of Bleach were really enjoyable, and this links to how expansion in an adaptation is not inherently a bad thing. And that's it. If I could, I would talk about this manga forever and ever, but we don't have that kind of time today. To end this video, despite all that I've praised and criticized, Bleach remains one of the most popular and successful mangas of the 20th century, and it delves deep into themes on grief, death, power, and trust. It's a really deep manga. Whether the rush ending was indicative of Kubo's writing skills, I still thoroughly enjoyed myself. Kubo, for all of his shortcomings, has crafted a universe that is rich, fun, and relatable for many, such as myself. But best of all, he gave Ichigo insane drip. Hands down, my man has some of the best style I've ever seen for an anime character. He actually changes his clothes and look at these fits, full of drip. Anyway, I hope you really enjoyed this video. Thank you!